On March 11th, 2011, an earthquake struck Japan. If you were in Tokyo at 2:46 p.m., you felt buildings start to sway. How many here have been through an earthquake before? It's quite a few. The first 20 seconds, it takes a while for the brain to register what exactly is going on. You feel dizzy. You get vertigo. The next 30 seconds, you comprehend what's going on, and now you're trying to determine, where do I go? Where is it safe? After about a minute and a half, the P wave and the S wave that hit you start to subside, unless you were in Tokyo on March 11, 2011, because it got bigger and bigger and went longer. 5 minutes. At Fukushima power plant, at the moment that earthquake hit, the rod shut down, the power went offline. Fukushima performed as designed. The only problem is, even though the plant was shut down, this is not Chernobyl. 7% of the potential energy that was available to come out of that plant was still there. In Hawaii, where I was located as the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, we were watching everything as it was unfolding. When the earthquake reached the magnitude of 8.4, we thought there is definitely a problem with the instrumentation. Because historically, Japan had never sustained anything more than an 8.4 magnitude earthquake. It reached 9.0. It was a 1,000-year event that affected the tilt of the Earth's axis. It moved Honshu. It moved Japan 7 to 10 feet. And then it dropped the coastline, and the tsunami formed. Because Japan is the most instrumented country in the world, we now know what happened, where, and when. 62 miles off the coast of Japan, at a depth of about 21,500 feet, the Eurasian plate, which had collided with the Pacific plate more than 300 years earlier at a speed of advance of about 3 inches per year, built up so much energy. Finally, for some reason that is not clear to us, the Pacific plate that was underneath the Eurasian plate where Japan sits had pulled and tugged on that plate for so long that it finally released all of that energy. And that displacement, 21,500 feet of water, is going to go somewhere. And it's going to go somewhere fast, at the speed of an airplane. In Hawaii, we were watching ships, trying to figure out where to harbor them for safety, how to take care of people, evacuate the coastlines, and prepare for the worst. In Japan, they didn't have that much time. 500 miles per hour, this wave is now moving from the epicenter, 62 nautical miles northeast of Honshu, and moving towards the coastline at a very high speed. The lower part of the wave is moving faster than the upper shallow water area. And as that high-speed wave confronts conditions of changing soil underneath the ocean, as the topography changes, the wave starts to build. Across the ocean, that same wave is about 3 to 4 feet high, which is extraordinary when you think about it. Something that is moving that fast. We have video of ships that are confronting the wave themselves out in open ocean. And they're lucky because of the angle in which they hit the wave that they were able to survive and their ships weren't capsized. And these were combatant vessels. That wave builds up and hits the coastline. And even though the architecture in downtown Tokyo survived the earthquake largely because of the design that went into buildings, no one ever anticipated what would happen if the coastline dropped. And the coastline dropped by more than a meter. It affected all of the flow of the water as it starts to hit Iwate, Fukushima, prefectures. And when the wave hits, it is like an egg beater. It churns and churns and then funnels in where it reached a height of about 133 feet in certain parts of northeast Japan. All the way in about 10 kilometers, about 6.5 miles, and then grabs everything within its grasp and then pulls it back out to sea, and it creates this image of sea tankers and ocean-going ships that are on top of buildings and automobiles and homes that are out to sea. In all of my years in the deployments of the Navy, when I left Dallas 40 years ago, I had never seen anything that had prepared me for the wrath and the destruction that hit Japan. In the leadership's own words in Japan, it is the worst devastation that the country has withstood since World War II. 387,000 people homeless in just a second, just like that. 270,000 buildings destroyed, 16,000 confirmed dead, almost 4,000 missing. Extraordinary. Extraordinary, the destruction. But extraordinary also is what we learn about ourselves. At that moment of tragedy, in that hour of crisis, in that time of calamity and chaos all around you, you learn about yourself and you learn about this brotherhood of humanity. If ever there was a time and place that history records where people made a commitment to their fellow man, it will be in Japan, where more people ran to the scene of the tragedy than those who were trying to escape the effect of the earthquake, the tsunami, and the loss of primary, secondary, and tertiary power at Fukushima power plant and the radiation explosion that took place afterwards. If ever there is a time and place in history where we have an opportunity to see the wrath of nature impacting and bringing out the best in humanity, it will be in Sendai. That's right, Sendai, Dallas's sister city. I'll never forget the image of visiting in the hours and days following the earthquake at a local school that has become now home to thousands of people. I walked upstairs, and the classrooms are now the dwelling places for so many families. And you know what? The shoes are all lined up outside. And the classroom is now treated with the reverence and respect of a home. A lady stepped out with that same due respect to me and I for her. She bowed, she took my hand, and I could not get her to stand up. She wept openly. It was quite clear that the wave that had done so much damage had summoned an extraordinary resilience inside the mind, the heart, and the soul of the people who lived there. And you could tell, despite her years, she was committed for the rest of her life, as long as God gave her the life, to make sure that her kids and her grandkids were going to have something better than what they had that day. And she was going to pursue that with patience and politeness and prudence. If ever there was a time and place where there was heartfelt contribution without concern for credit, it would be Operation Tomodachi, a word that simply means friend. Think about it, a military operation named Friend. This was a time and place where the Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group, soldiers from Camp Zama, sailors from Sasebo, airmen from Misawa, all got together with the 50 non-governmental organizations who were there, the ministries of Japan, the Self-Defense Force, the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Response Force from here in the United States, as well as with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Extraordinary. Extraordinary because the mark of a true impressive organization is one that can land on its feet and put together a script for an environment where there is no plan. When I think about the key lessons that came out of that, it was the ability of this very, very diverse group of people to look at a situation and go, you know what? I can't solve this problem myself. This is bigger than me. And we need a solution that is the best that the country can offer. Think about that. The best that the country can offer. So what we're really saying is, I can't go back to the traditional organization where we think vertically on how to build organizations and structure. Relationships that are senior and subordinate, that have clear lines of resources as well as accountability. This is a problem that's much bigger than that. And I'm admitting it by saying I need the best that the country can offer. So we built a joint support force, and it's not in doctrine anywhere, but it's built on the idea of thinking horizontally rather than vertically. It's built for collaboration. It's built for transparency. There is no idea of having a US-only sort of meeting. We're going to have all of our partners in every meeting, and we're getting the good news and the bad news together. See, we learned something in Operation Tomodachi, something that we weren't expecting. We learned what was possible, and that was a very different idea, considering that we walked into something that was absolutely apocalyptic when we first arrived. We needed a clear understanding of how to evaluate, how to characterize the environment. As you see the pictures here of all the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief that's ongoing at the same time, what's lurking in here that you can't see is radiation. Should we be afraid of it? Should we run from it? Well, the answer was, we're not running. We're staying. Jacob Needleman, an author here in the United States, wrote The American Soul, and he talks about big ideas and how great ideas are formed. They're formed from an ache. And what distinguishes great ideas is that they can pull together the diverse elements of the human spirit. They can bind people together. Ideas can do that. So, did it work? Let's ask the Japanese. What I'd like to do is I'd like to turn your attention now to the screen and give you an opportunity to hear a message that we've heard from them, but it's also intended for you.
ありがとう。
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 ありがとう。ありがとう。
ありがとう。
あなたたちのおかげでたくさんの命が救われました。ありがとう。
水や
毛布、あったかいコーヒー、
そして何よりも
愛と
勇気を、愛と
勇気を、たくさんの愛と勇気を。
本当にありがとう。
まだまだ先は長いけれど、少しずつ
少しずつ進んでいきます。これからも応援してください。
私たちは
私たちは僕は
俺たちはあなたたちのことを
あなたたちのこと先生のこと先生のこと
決して
忘れません。
皆様の
ありがとうございました。
本当にありがとうございます。
シェイシェイ
ウェルシー
フラーテ
スパシーボ
シェケラ
戸田
サンキューベリーマッチ。
カザミダ。ありがとう。
The power of thank you. That's a message intended for you. Nations have interests, but people, we have friends. And we will take risks for people who we call our friends and those who stand with us. At this point in the commentary, it would be logical to talk about the ongoing, continuing challenges that face Fukushima power plant. Certainly, there's a debate that's now ongoing in ways that have a lot more evidence as well as a lot more emotion about the future of nuclear power. But I'm not going to do that. This would be a time to talk about the continuing challenges that we faced in the environment in terms of the spillage that take place in the Pacific Ocean that we're all going to inherit, whether we like this or not. This is not some problem that we can simply wipe our hands clean and say, this is not our issue. But I'm not going to do that. Given the budgetary environment that we've been in for the past few weeks and months, I think it's important to address the question that where we're going as a country with our resources, to be able to answer the question, could we do an operation like that with less ships or with less people, with less resources? Probably. But I am going to point out one thing that I think is critically important. It's an investment that you've been making for a long time that we don't talk about anymore. See, the officers that were part of this operation, they had master's degrees. And I want you to think about that in context here. The country has advanced its national interests through public education and the military since 1862. It's language that's written in the Morrill Act. That's when, going through the scourge of war, the country realized they needed to bring public education and the military together. Since 1973, since we went to an all-volunteer force, we valued experience. We wanted a professionalized force, and we matched career planning with higher education goals because we wanted not only experience, we wanted relevant experience. In 1986, Goldwater-Nichols brought us a requirement now for officers who were staying in as career officers to go through joint professional military education, which eventually became an advanced degree. So those people who were part of this operation, whether they're engineers or whether they're lawyers who are studying for their international law degree, or they're general purpose officers who are part of planning efforts that take place at the advanced level at the National War College or at the service war colleges, have gone through something that we sometimes take for granted here, the American model for higher education. Think about it. By design, you're alone. You have to come up with your idea. You have to survey the landscape of ideas and determine, yes, in fact, your idea is uniquely yours. You gather evidence. You conduct primary research. You put together an argument. You form a conclusion, and it has to withstand the scrutiny of peers and public discussion. That's what prepares us for the unknown, the unscripted, the unprogrammed. That's how you land on your feet and think critically and think independently. And so as we go through this discussion about the future of resources, Don't ever lose track of the fact that we've already invested in higher education. It's simply a matter of asking, what are we getting in return for it? Ladies and gentlemen, in Texas alone, we have 8.5% veterans in our population. Be the one that hires the vet because they've been through this experience and they can make your company better. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to them. Thank you.